tonight, we drift into a quieter world. A world where ancient forests whisper secrets, and every word is a gentle bridge to peace. Whether it is a lesson of the heart, a hero's journey, or a dream from long ago, you don't need to follow every detail. You don't need to hold on to any thought. Just listen. Let the rhythm of the tale wash over you. And as your body grows heavy, let the magic of these stories carry you away into a deep and effortless sleep. The neighboring families. One would have thought that something important was going on in the duck pond, but it was nothing after all. All the ducks lying quietly on the water, or standing on their heads in it, for they could do that. At once swarm to the sides. The traces of their feet were seen in the wet earth, and their cackling was heard far and wide. The water, which a few moments before had been as clear and smooth as a mirror, became very troubled. Before, every tree, every neighboring bush, the old farmhouse with the holes in the roof, and the swallow's nest, and especially the great rose bush full of flowers, had been reflected in it. The rose bush covered the wall and hung out over the water, in which everything was seen, as if in a picture, except that it all stood on its head. But when the water was troubled, everything got mixed up, and the picture was gone. 2 feathers, which the fluttering ducks had lost, floated up and down. Suddenly, they took a rush, as if the wind were coming. But as it did not come, they had to lie still, and the water once more became quiet and smooth. The roses were again reflected. They were very beautiful, but they did not know it, for no one had told them. The sun shone among the delicate leaves. Everything breathed forth the loveliest fragrance, and all felt as we do when we are filled with joy at the thought of our happiness. "How beautiful existence is," said each rose. "The only thing that I wish for is to be able to kiss the sun, because it is so warm and bright. I should also like to kiss those roses down in the water, which are so much like us, and the pretty little birds down in the nest. There are some up above too. They put out their heads and pipe softly. They have no feathers, like their father and mother. We have good neighbors, both below and above. How beautiful existence is. The young ones above and below. Those below were really only shadows in the water, were sparrows. Their parents were sparrows too, and had taken possession of the empty swallow's nest of last year, and now lived in it, as if it were their own property. "Are those the ducks' children swimming here?" asked the young sparrows when they saw the feathers on the water. "If you must ask questions, ask sensible ones," said their mother. "Don't you see that They are feathers such as I wear, and you will wear too. But ours are finer. Still, I should like to have them up in the nest, for they keep one warm. I am very curious to know what the ducks were so startled about. Not about us, certainly, although I did say peep to you pretty loudly. The thick-headed roses ought to know why, but they know nothing at all. They only look at themselves and smell. I am heartily tired of such neighbors. Listen to the dear little birds up there, said the roses. They begin to want to sing too, but are not able to manage it yet. But it will soon come. What a pleasure that must be. It is fine to have such cheerful neighbors. Suddenly, 2 horses came galloping up to be watered. A peasant boy rode on one, and he had taken off all his clothes except his large, broad black hat. The boy whistled like a bird and rode into the pond where it was deepest. And as he passed the rose bush, he plucked a rose and stuck it in his hat. Now he looked dressed and rode on. The other roses looked after their sister and asked each other, "Where can she be going to?" But none of them knew. "I should like to go out into the world for once," said one. "But here at home among our green leaves, it is beautiful too. The whole day long the sun shines bright and warm, and in the night the sky shines more beautifully still. We can see that through all the little holes in it." They meant the stars, but they knew no better. "We make it lively about the house," said the sparrow mother. "And people say that a swallow's nest brings luck, so they are glad of us. But such neighbors as ours, a rose bush on the wall like that causes damp. I dare say it will be taken away. Then we shall perhaps have some corn growing here. The roses are good for nothing but to be looked at and to be smelt, or at most to be stuck in a hat. Every year, as I have been told by my mother, they fall off. The farmer's wife preserves them and strews salt among them. Then they get a French name, which I neither can pronounce nor care to, and are put into the fire to make a nice smell. You see, that's their life. They exist only for the eye and the nose. Now you know. In the evening, when the gnats were playing about in the warm air and in the red clouds, the nightingale came and sang to the roses that the beautiful was like sunshine to the world, and that the beautiful lived forever. The roses thought that the nightingale was singing about itself, and that one might easily have believed. They had no idea that the song was about them, but they were very pleased with it, and wondered whether all the little sparrows could become nightingales. I understand the song of that bird very well, said the young sparrows. There was only one word that was not clear to me, "What does the beautiful mean?" "Nothing at all," answered their mother. "That's only something external. Up at the hall, where the pigeons have their own house and corn and peas are strewn before them every day. I have dined with them myself, and that you shall do in time too. For tell me what company you keep, and I'll tell you who you are. Up at the hall, they have 2 birds with green necks and a crest upon their heads. They can spread out their tails like a great wheel, and these are so bright with various colors that it makes one's eyes ache. These birds are called peacocks, and that is the beautiful. If they were only plucked a little, they would look no better than the rest of us. I would have plucked them already if they had not been so big." "I'll pluck them," piped the young sparrow, who had no feathers yet. In the farmhouse lived a young married couple. They loved each other dearly, were industrious and active, and everything in their home looked very nice. On Sundays, the young wife came down early, plucked a handful of the most beautiful roses, and put them into a glass of water, which she placed upon the cupboard. "Now I see that it is Sunday," said the husband, kissing his little wife. They sat down, read their hymn book, and held each other by the hand while the sun shone down upon the fresh roses and upon them. "This sight is really too tedious," said the sparrow mother, who could see into the room from her nest. And she flew away. The same thing happened on the following Sunday. For every Sunday, fresh roses were put into the glass, but the rose bush bloomed as beautifully as ever. The young sparrows now had feathers and wanted very much to fly with their mother, but she would not allow it, and so they had to stay at home. In one of her flights, however it may have happened, she was caught before she was aware of it in a horsehair net, which some boys had attached to a tree. The horsehair was drawn tightly round her leg, as tightly as if the latter were to be cut off. She was in great pain and terror. The boys came running up and seized her, and in no gentle way either. "It's only a sparrow," they said. They did not, however, let her go, but took her home with them, and every time she cried, they hit her on the beak. In the farmhouse was an old man who understood making soap into cakes and balls, both for shaving and washing. He was a merry old man, always wandering about. On seeing the sparrow, which the boys had brought, and which they said they did not want, he asked, "Shall we make it look very pretty?" At these words, an icy shudder ran through the sparrow mother. Out of his box, in which were the most beautiful colors, the old man took a quantity of shining leaf gold, while the boys had to go and fetch some white of egg, with which the sparrow was to be smeared all over. The gold was stuck onto this and the sparrow. Mother was now gilded all over, but she, trembling in every limb, did not think of the adornment. Then the soap man tore off a small piece from the red lining of his old jacket, and cutting it so as to make it look like a cock's comb, he stuck it to the bird's head. "Now you will see the gold jacket fly," said the old man, letting the sparrow go, which flew away in deadly fear with the sun shining upon her. How she glittered! All the sparrows, and even a crow, and an old boy he was too, were startled at the sight, but they flew after her to learn what kind of strange bird she was. Driven by fear and horror, she flew homeward. She was almost sinking, fainting to the earth, while the flock of pursuing birds increased, some even attempting to peck at her. "Look at her! Look at her!" they all cried. "Look at her! Look at her!" cried her little ones as she approached the nest. "That is certainly a young peacock, for it glitters in all colors. It makes one's eyes ache, as Mother told us. Peep, that's the beautiful." And then they pecked at the bird with their little beaks, so that it was impossible for her to get into the nest. She was so exhausted that she couldn't even say, "Peep," much less, "I am your own mother." The other birds, too, now fell upon the sparrow and plucked off feather after feather until she fell bleeding into the rose bush. "Poor creature," said all the roses. "Only be still, and we will hide you. Lean your little head against us." The sparrow spread out her wings once more, then drew them closely to her and lay dead near the neighboring family, the beautiful fresh roses. "Peep," sounded from the nest. "Where can Mother be so long? It's more than I can understand. It cannot be a trick of hers and mean that we are now to take care of ourselves. She has left us the house as an inheritance. But to which of us is it to belong when we have families of our own? Yes, it won't do for you to stay with me when I increase my household with a wife and children," said the smallest. "I dare say I shall have more wives and children than you," said the second. "But I am the eldest," exclaimed the third. Then they all got excited. They hit out with their wings, pecked with their beaks, and flopped, one after another, was thrown out of the nest. There they lay, with their anger holding their heads on one side, and blinking the eye that was turned upwards. That was their way of looking foolish. They could fly a little. By practice, they learned to improve, and at last they agreed upon a sign by which to recognize each other if they should meet in the world later on. It was to be one peep and 3 scratches on the ground with the left foot. The young one, who had remained behind in the nest, made himself as broad as he could, for he was the proprietor. But this greatness did not last long. In the night, the red flames burst through the window and seized the roof. The dry straw blazed up high, and the whole house, together with the young sparrow, was burned. The two others, who wanted to marry, thus saved their lives by a stroke of luck when the sun rose again, and everything looked as refreshed as if it had had a quiet sleep. There only remained of the farmhouse a few black charred beams leaning against the chimney, which was now its own master. Thick smoke still rose from the ruins, but the rose bush stood yonder, fresh blooming and untouched, every flower and every twig being reflected in the clear water. How beautifully the roses bloom before the ruined house, exclaimed a passer-by. A pleasanter picture cannot be imagined. I must have that. And the man took out of his portfolio a little book with white leaves. He was a painter, and with his pencil he drew the smoking house, the charred beams, and the overhanging chimney, which bent more and more. In the foreground, he put the large, blooming rose bush, which presented a charming view. For its sake alone, the whole picture had been drawn. Later in the day, the two sparrows who had been born there came by. "Where is the house?" they asked. "Where is the nest? Peep, all is burned, and our strong brother too. That's what he has now for keeping the nest. The roses got off very well. There they still stand with their red cheeks. They certainly do not mourn at their neighbors' misfortunes. I don't want to talk to them, and it looks miserable here. That's my opinion." And away they went on a beautiful sunny autumn day. One could almost have believed it was still the middle of summer. There hopped about in the dry, clean-swept courtyard before the principal entrance of the hall a number of black, white, and gaily colored pigeons, all shining in the sunlight. The pigeon mothers said to their young ones, stand in groups, for that looks much better." "What kind of creatures are those little gray ones that run about behind us?" asked an old pigeon with red and green in her eyes. Little gray ones, she cried. "They are sparrows and good creatures. We have always had the reputation of being pious, so we will allow them to pick up the corn with us. They don't interrupt our talk, and they scrape so prettily when they bow. Indeed, they were continually making 3-foot scrapings with the left foot, and also said, 'Peep.' By this means, they recognized each other, for they were the sparrows from the nest on the burned house. 'Here is excellent fare,' said the sparrow. The pigeons strutted round one another, puffed out their chests mightily, and had their own private views and opinions. 'Do you see that Powder pigeon, said one to the other. Do you see how she swallows the peas? She eats too many, and the best ones, too. Kuru, kuru, how she lifts her crest, the ugly, spiteful creature. Kuru, kuru, and the eyes of all sparkled with malice. Stand in groups, little gray ones, kuru, kuru, kuru. So their chatter ran on, and so it will run on for thousands of years. The sparrows ate lustily. They listened attentively, and even stood in the ranks with the others. But it did not suit them at all. They were full, and so they left the pigeons exchanging opinions about them, slipped in under the garden palings, and when they found the door leading into the house open, one of them, who was more than full, and therefore felt brave, hopped on to the threshold. Peep, said he, I may venture that. Peep, said the other, so may I, and something more, too. And he hopped into the room. No one was there. The third sparrow, seeing this, flew still farther into the room, exclaiming, All or nothing. It is a curious man's nest, all the same. And what have they put up here? What is it? Close to the sparrows, the roses were blooming. They were reflected in the water, and the charred beams leaned against the overhanging chimney. Do tell me what this is. How comes this in a room at the hall? And all three sparrows wanted to fly over the roses and the chimney, but flew against a flat wall. It was all a picture, a great, splendid picture, which the artist had painted from a sketch. Peep, said the sparrows. It's nothing. It only looks like something. Peep, that is, the beautiful. Do you understand it? I don't. And they flew away. For some people came into the room. Days and years went by. The pigeons had often cooed, not to say growled, the spiteful creatures. The sparrows had been frozen in winter and had lived merrily in summer. They were all betrothed or married or whatever you like to call it. They had little ones, and of course, each one thought his own, the handsomest and cleverest. One flew this way, another that. And when they met, they recognized each other by their peep and the 3 scrapes with the left foot. The eldest had remained an old maid and had no nest nor young ones. It was her pet idea to see a great city, so she flew to Copenhagen. There was a large house painted in many gay colors, standing close to the castle and the canal, upon which latter were to be seen many ships laden with apples and pottery. The windows of the house were broader at the bottom than at the top, and when the sparrows looked through them, every room appeared to them like a tulip with the brightest colors and shades. But in the middle of the tulip stood white men made of marble. A few were of plaster, still looked at with sparrow's eyes that comes to the same thing. Up on the roof stood a metal chariot drawn by metal horses, and the goddess of victory, also of metal, was driving. It was Thorwaldsen's museum. How it shines, how it shines, said the maiden sparrow. I suppose that is the beautiful. Peep, but here it is larger than a peacock. She still remembered what in her childhood's days her mother had looked upon as the greatest among the beautiful. She flew down into the courtyard. There everything was extremely fine. Palms and branches were painted on the walls, and in the middle of the court stood a great blooming rose tree, spreading out its fresh boughs, covered with roses over a grave. Thither flew the maiden sparrow, for she saw several of her own kind there, a peep and 3 foot scrapings. In this way, she had often greeted throughout the year, and no one here had responded, for those who are once parted do not meet every day. And so, this greeting had become a habit with her. But today, 2 old sparrows and a young one answered with a peep, and the thrice repeated scrip with the left foot. Ah, good day, good day. They were 2 old ones from the nest and a little one of the family. Do we meet here? It's a grand place, but there's not much to eat. This is the beautiful. Peep. Many people came out of the side rooms where the beautiful marble statues stood and approached the grave where lay the great master who had created these works of art. All stood with enraptured faces round Thorwaldsen's grave, and a few picked up the fallen rose leaves and preserved them. They had come from afar, one from mighty England, others from Germany and France. The fairest of the ladies plucked one of the roses and hid it in her bosom. Then the sparrows thought that the roses reigned here, and that the house had been built for their sake. That appeared to them to be really too much. But since all the people showed their love for the roses, they did not wish to be behindhand. Peep, they said, sweeping the ground with their tails, and blinking with one eye at the roses. They had not looked at them long before they were convinced that they were their old neighbors. And so they really were. The painter, who had drawn the rose bush near the ruined house, had afterwards obtained permission to dig it up, and had given it to the architect, for finer roses had never been seen. The architect had planted it upon Thorwaldsen's grave, where it bloomed as an emblem of the beautiful, and yielded fragrant red rose leaves to be carried as mementos to distant lands. Have you obtained an appointment here in the city? Asked the sparrows. The roses nodded. They recognized their gray neighbors and were pleased to see them again. How glorious it is to live and to bloom to see old friends again and happy faces every day. It is as if every day were a festival. "Peep," said the sparrows. "Yes, they are really our old neighbors. We remember their origin near the pond. Peep how they have got on. Yes, some succeed while they are asleep. Ah, there's a faded leaf. I can see that quite plainly." And they pecked at it till it fell off. But the tree stood there, fresher and greener than ever. The roses bloomed in the sunshine on Thorwaldsen's grave and became associated with his immortal name. The Red Shoes. There was once a little girl who was very pretty and delicate. But in summer, she was forced to run about with bare feet. She was so poor, and in winter, wear very large wooden shoes, which made her little insteps quite red. And that looked so dangerous. In the middle of the village lived old Dame Shoemaker. She sat and sewed together, as well as she could, a little pair of shoes out of old red strips of cloth. They were very clumsy, but it was a kind thought. They were meant for the little girl. The little girl was called Karen. On the very day her mother was buried, Karen received the red shoes and wore them for the first time. They were certainly not intended for mourning, but she had no others. And with stockingless feet, she followed the poor straw coffin in them. Suddenly, a large old carriage drove up, and a large old lady sat in it. She looked at the little girl, felt compassion for her, and then said to the clergyman, "Here, give me the little girl. I will adopt her." And Karen believed all this happened on account of the red shoes, but the old lady thought they were horrible, and they were burnt. But Karen herself was cleanly and nicely dressed. She must learn to read and sew. And people said he was a nice little thing. But the looking glass said, "Thou art more than nice. Thou art beautiful." Now the queen once traveled through the land, and she had her little daughter with her. And this little daughter was a princess, and people streamed to the castle, and Karen was there also, and the little princess stood in her fine white dress in a window and let herself be stared at. She had neither a train nor a golden crown, but splendid red Morocco shoes. They were certainly far handsomer than those Dame Shoemaker had made for little Karen. Nothing in the world can be compared with red shoes. Now Karen was old enough to be confirmed. She had new clothes and was to have new shoes also. The rich shoemaker in the city took the measure of her little foot. This took place at his house in his room, where stood large glass cases filled with elegant shoes and brilliant boots. All this looked charming, but the old lady could not see well, and so had no pleasure in them. In the midst of the shoes stood a pair of red ones, just like those the princess had worn. How beautiful they were! The shoemaker said also they had been made for the child of a count, but had not fitted. "That must be patent leather," said the old lady. "They shine so." "Yes, they shine," said Karen, "and they fitted and were bought." But the old lady knew nothing about their being red, else she would never have allowed Karen to have gone in red shoes to be confirmed. Yet such was the case. Everybody looked at her feet, and when she stepped through the chancel door on the church pavement, it seemed to her as if the old figures on the tombs, those portraits of old preachers and preachers' wives with stiff ruffs and long black dresses, fixed their eyes on her red shoes, and she thought only of them as the clergyman laid his hand upon her head and spoke of the holy baptism of the covenant with God, and how she should be now a matured Christian. And the organ pealed so solemnly. The sweet children's voices sang, and the old music directors sang. But Karen only thought of her red shoes. In the afternoon, the old lady heard from everyone that the shoes had been red, and she said that it was very wrong of Karen, that it was not at all becoming, and that in future Karen should only go in black shoes to church, even when she should be older. The next Sunday, there was the sacrament, and Karen looked at the black shoes, looked at the red ones, looked at them again, and put on the red shoes. The sun shone gloriously. Karen and the old lady walked along the path through the corn. It was rather dusty there. At the church door stood an old soldier with a crutch and with a wonderfully long beard, which was more red than white. And he bowed to the ground and asked the old lady whether he might dust her shoes. And Karen stretched out her little foot. "See what beautiful dancing shoes," said the soldier. "Sit firm when you dance." And he put his hand out towards the soles. And the old lady gave the old soldier alms and went into the church with Karen. And all the people in the church looked at Karen's red shoes and all the pictures, and as Karen knelt before the altar and raised the cup to her lips, she only thought of the red shoes, and they seemed to swim in it. And she forgot to sing her psalm, and she forgot to pray, "Our Father in heaven." Now all the people went out of church, and the old lady got into her carriage. Karen raised her foot to get in after her when the old soldier said, "Look, what beautiful dancing shoes." And Karen could not help dancing a step or two, and when she began, her feet continued to dance. It was just as though the shoes had power over them. She danced round the church corner. She could not leave off. The coachman was obliged to run after and catch hold of her, and he lifted her in the carriage. but her feet continued to dance, so that she trod on the old lady dreadfully. At length, she took the shoes off, and then her legs had peace. The shoes were placed in a closet at home, but Karen could not avoid looking at them. Now the old lady was sick, and it was said she could not recover. She must be nursed and waited upon, and there was no one whose duty it was so much as Karen's. But there was a great ball in the city to which Karen was invited. She looked at the old lady who could not recover. She looked at the red shoes, and she thought there could be no sin in it. She put on the red shoes. She might do that also, she thought. But then she went to the ball and began to dance. When she wanted to dance to the right, the shoes would dance to the left. And when she wanted to dance up the room, the shoes danced back again, down the steps into the street, and out of the city gate. She danced and was forced to dance straight out into the gloomy wood. Then it was suddenly light up among the trees, and she fancied it must be the moon, for there was a face. But it was the old soldier with the red beard. He sat there, nodded his head, and said, "Look what beautiful dancing shoes." Then she was terrified and wanted to fling off the red shoes, but they clung fast. And she pulled down her stockings, but the shoes seemed to have grown to her feet, and she danced, and must dance, over fields and meadows, in rain and sunshine, by night and day. But at night it was the most fearful. She danced over the churchyard, but the dead did not dance. They had something better to do than to dance. She wished to seat herself on a poor man's grave where the bitter tansy grew. But for her, there was neither peace nor rest. And when she danced towards the open church door, she saw an angel standing there. He wore long white garments. He had wings which reached from his shoulders to the earth. His countenance was severe and grave, and in his hand he held a sword, broad and glittering. "Dance shalt thou," said he. "Dance in thy red shoes, till thou art pale and cold, till thy skin shrivels up, and thou art a skeleton. Dance shalt thou from door to door, and where proud, vain children dwell, thou shalt knock, that they may hear thee and tremble. Dance shalt thou." "Mercy," cried Karen, but she did not hear the angel's reply. For the shoes carried her through the gate, into the fields, across roads and bridges, and she must keep ever dancing. One morning, she danced past a door which she well knew. Within sounded a psalm. A coffin decked with flowers was borne forth. Then she knew that the old lady was dead, and felt that she was abandoned by all and condemned by the angel of God. She danced, and she was forced to dance through the gloomy night. The shoes carried her over stack and stone, She was torn till she bled. She danced over the heath till she came to a little house. Here she knew dwelt the executioner, and she tapped with her fingers at the window and said, "Come out, come out. I cannot come in, for I am forced to dance." And the executioner said, "Thou dost not know who I am. I fancy I strike bad people's heads off, and I hear that my axe rings." "Don't strike my head off," said Karen. "Then I can't repent of my sins, but strike off my feet in the red shoes." And then she confessed her entire sin, and the executioner struck off her feet with the red shoes. But the shoes danced away with the little feet across the field into the deep wood. And he carved out little wooden feet for her, and crutches taught her the psalm criminals always sing. And she kissed the hand which had wielded the axe, and went over the heath. "Now I have suffered enough for the red shoes," said she. "Now I will go into the church that people may see me." And she hastened towards the church door. But when she was near it, the red shoes danced before her, and she was terrified and turned round. The whole week she was unhappy and wept many bitter tears. But when Sunday returned, she said, "Well, now I have suffered and struggled enough. I really believe I am as good as many a one who sits in the church and holds her head so high." And away she went boldly. But she had not got farther than the churchyard gate before she saw the red shoes dancing before her. And she was frightened and turned back and repented of her sin from her heart. And she went to the parsonage and begged that they would take her into service. She would be very industrious, she said, and would do everything she could. She did not care about the wages, only she wished to have a home and be with good people. And the clergyman's wife was sorry for her and took her into service. And she was industrious and thoughtful. She sat still and listened when the clergyman read the Bible in the evenings. All the children thought a great deal of her, but when they spoke of dress and grandeur and beauty, she shook her head. The following Sunday, when the family was going to church, they asked her whether she would not go with them. But she glanced sorrowfully, with tears in her eyes, at her crutches. The family went to hear the word of God, but she went alone into her little chamber. There was only room for a bowl and chair to stand in it. And here she sat down with her prayer book. And whilst she read with a pious mind, the wind bore the strains of the organ towards her, and she raised her tearful countenance and said, "Oh God, help me." And the sun shone so clearly, and straight before her stood the angel of God in white garments, the same she had seen that night at the church door. But he no longer carried the sharp sword, but in its stead a splendid green spray full of roses. and he touched the ceiling with the spray, and the ceiling rose so high, and where he had touched it, there gleamed a golden star, and he touched the walls, and they widened out, and she saw the organ which was playing. She saw the old pictures of the preachers and the preachers' wives. The congregation sat in cushioned seats and sang out of their prayer books. For the church itself had come to the poor girl in her narrow chamber, or else she had come into the church. She sat in the pew with the clergyman's family, and when they had ended the psalm and looked up, they nodded and said, "It is right that thou art come." "It was through mercy," she said. And the organ pealed, and the children's voices in the choir sounded so sweet and soft. The clear sunshine streamed so warmly through the window into the pew where Karen sat. Her heart was so full of sunshine, peace, and joy that it broke. Her soul flew on the sunshine to God, and there no one asked after the red shoes. The shepherdess and the sweep. Have you ever seen an old wooden cupboard, quite black with age, and ornamented with carved foliage and curious figures? Well, just such a cupboard stood in a parlor and had been left to the family as a legacy by the great-grandmother. It was covered from top to bottom with carved roses and tulips. The most curious scrolls were drawn upon it, and out of them peeped little stags' heads with antlers. In the middle of the cupboard door was the carved figure of a man most ridiculous to look at. He grinned at you, for no one could call it laughing. He had goat's legs, little horns on his head, and a long beard. The children in the room always called him Major General Field Sergeant Commander Billy Goat's Legs. It was certainly a very difficult name to pronounce, and there are very few who ever receive such a title. But then it seemed wonderful how he came to be carved at all. Yet there he was, always looking at the table under the looking-glass, where stood a very pretty little shepherdess made of china. Her shoes were gilt, and her dress had a red rose or an ornament. She wore a hat and carried a crook that were both gilded and looked very bright and pretty. Close by her side stood a little chimney sweep, as black as coal, and also made of china. He was quite as clean and neat as any other china figure. He only represented a black chimney sweep, and the china workers might just as well have made him a prince, had they felt inclined to do so. He stood, holding his ladder quite handily, and his face was as fair and rosy as a girl's. Indeed, that was rather a mistake. It should have had some black marks on it. I and the shepherdess had been placed close together, side by side, and being so placed, they became engaged to each other, for they were very well suited. being both made of the same sort of china and being equally fragile. Close to them stood another figure 3 times as large as they were, and also made of china. He was an old Chinaman who could nod his head and used to pretend that he was the grandfather of the shepherdess, although he could not prove it. He, however, assumed authority over her, and therefore, when Major General Field Sergeant Commander Billy Goat's Legs asked for the little shepherdess to be his wife, he nodded his head to show that he consented. "You will have a husband," said the old Chinaman to her, "who I really believe is made of mahogany. He will make you a lady of Major General Field Sergeant Commander Billy Goat's Legs. He has the whole cupboard full of silver plate, which he keeps locked up in secret drawers." "I won't go into the dark cupboard," said the little shepherdess. "I have heard that he has 11 china wives there already." "Then you shall be the 12th, said the old Chinaman. "Tonight, as soon as you hear a rattling in the old cupboard, you shall be married as true as I am a Chinaman." And then he nodded his head and fell asleep. Then the little shepherdess cried and looked at her sweetheart, the china chimney sweep. "I must entreat you," said she, "to go out with me into the wide world, for we cannot stay here." "I will do whatever you wish," said the little chimney sweep. "Let us go immediately. I think I shall be able to maintain you with my profession. If we were but safely down from the table," said she, "I shall not be happy till we are really out in the world." Then he comforted her and showed her how to place her little foot on the carved edge and gilt leaf ornaments of the table. He brought his little ladder to help her, and so they contrived to reach the floor. But when they looked at the old cupboard, they saw it was all in an uproar. The carved stags pushed out their heads, raised their antlers, and twisted their necks. The Major General sprung up in the air and cried out to the old Chinaman, "They are running away! They are running away!" The two were rather frightened at this, so they jumped into the drawer of the window seat. Here were 3 or 4 packs of cards, not quite complete, and a doll's theater, which had been built up very neatly. A comedy was being performed in it, and all the queens of diamonds, clubs and hearts and spades sat in the first row, fanning themselves with tulips, and behind them stood all the knaves, showing that they had heads above and below, as playing cards generally have. The play was about 2 lovers who were not allowed to marry, and the shepherdess wept because it was so like her own story. "I cannot bear it," said she. "I must get out of the drawer." But when they reached the floor and cast their eyes on the table, there was the old Chinaman awake and shaking his whole body, till all at once down he came on the floor, plump. "The old Chinaman is coming," cried the little shepherdess in a fright, and down she fell on one knee. "I have thought of something," said the chimney sweep. "Let us get into the great pot-pourri jar which stands in the corner. There we can lie on rose leaves and lavender, and throw salt in his eyes if he comes near us." "No, that will never do," said she, "because I know that the Chinaman and the pot-pourri jar were lovers once, and there always remains behind a feeling of goodwill between those who have been so intimate as that. No, there is nothing left for us but to go out into the wide world. Have you really courage enough to go out into the wide world with me?" said the chimney sweep. "Have you thought how large it is, and that we can never come back here again?" "Yes, I have," she replied. When the chimney sweep that she was quite firm, he said, "My way is through the stove and up the chimney. Have you courage to creep with me through the firebox and the iron pipe? When we get to the chimney, I shall know how to manage very well. We shall soon climb too high for anyone to reach us, and we shall come through a hole in the top out into the wide world." So he led her to the door of the stove. "It looks very dark," said she. Still she went in with him through the stove and through the pipe, where it was as dark as pitch. "Now we are in the chimney," said he, "and look, there is a beautiful star shining above it." It was a real star shining down upon them, as if it would show them the way. So they clambered and crept on, and a frightful steep place it was. But the chimney sweep helped her and supported her till they got higher and higher. He showed her the best places on which to set her little china foot. So at last they reached the top of the chimney and sat themselves down, for they were very tired, as may be supposed. The sky with all its stars was over their heads, and below were the roofs of the town. They could see for a very long distance out into the wide world, and the poor little shepherdess leaned her head on her chimney sweep's shoulder and wept till she washed the gilt off her sash. The world was so different to what she expected. "This is too much," she said. "I cannot bear it. The world is too large. Oh, I wish I were safe back on the table again under the looking-glass. I shall never be happy till I am safe back again. Now I have followed you out into the wide world. You will take me back if you love me." Then the chimney sweep tried to reason with her, and spoke of the old Chinaman and of the Major General Field Sergeant, Commander Billy Goat's legs. But she sobbed so bitterly and kissed her little chimney sweep till he was obliged to do all she asked, foolish as it was. And so, with a great deal of trouble, they climbed down the chimney, and then crept through the pipe and stove which were certainly not very pleasant places. Then they stood in the dark firebox and listened behind the door to hear what was going on in the room. As it was all quiet, they peeped out. Alas, there lay the old Chinaman on the floor. He had fallen down from the table as he attempted to run after them and was broken into 3 pieces. His back had separated entirely, and his head had rolled into a corner of the room. The Major General stood in his old place and appeared lost in thought. "This is terrible," said the little shepherdess. "My poor old grandfather is broken to pieces, and it is our fault. I shall never live after this." And she wrung her little hands. "He can be riveted," said the chimney sweep. "He can be riveted. Do not be so hasty. If they cement his back and put a good rivet in it, he will be as good as new, and be able to say as many disagreeable things to us as ever." "Do you think so?" said she. And then they climbed up to the table and stood in their old places. "As we have done no good," said the chimney sweep, "we might as well have remained here instead of taking so much trouble." "I wish grandfather was riveted," said the shepherdess. "Will it cost much, I wonder?" And she had her wish. The family had the Chinaman's back mended and a strong rivet put through his neck. He looked as good as new, but he could no longer nod his head. "You have become proud since your fall broke you to pieces," said Major General Field Sergeant Commander Billy Goat's Legs. "You have no reason to give yourself such airs. Am I to have her or not?" The chimney sweep and the little shepherdess looked piteously at the old Chinaman, for they were afraid he might nod. But he was not able. Besides, it was so tiresome to be always telling strangers he had a rivet in the back of his neck. And so the little China people remained together and were glad of the grandfather's rivet and continued to love each other till they were broken to pieces. The bell. In the narrow streets of a large town, people often heard in the evening when the sun was setting, and his last rays gave a golden tint to the chimney pots, a strange noise which resembled the sound of a church bell. It only lasted an instant, for it was lost in the continual roar of traffic and hum of voices which rose from the town. "The evening bell is ringing," people used to say. "The sun is setting." Those who walked outside the town, where the houses were less crowded and interspersed by gardens and little fields, saw the evening sky much better and heard the sound of the bell much more clearly. It seemed as though the sound came from a church deep in the calm, fragrant wood, and thither people looked with devout feelings. A considerable time elapsed, one said to the other. "I really wonder if there is a church out in the wood. The bell has indeed a strange, sweet sound. Shall we go there and see what the cause of it is? The rich drove, the poor walked, but the way seemed to them extraordinarily long. And when they arrived at a number of willow trees on the border of the wood, they sat down, looked up into the great branches, and thought they were now really in the wood. A confectioner from the town also came out and put up a stall there. Then came another confectioner, who hung a bell over his stall, which was covered with pitch to protect it from the rain. But the clapper was wanting. When people came home, they used to say that it had been very romantic, and that really means something else than merely taking tea. 3 persons declared that they had gone as far as the end of the wood. They had always heard the strange sound, but there it seemed to them as if it came from the town. One of them wrote verses about the bell and said that it was like the voice of a mother speaking to an intelligent and beloved child. No tune, he said, was sweeter than the sound of the bell. The emperor of the country heard of it and declared that he who would really find out where the sound came from should receive the title of bell ringer to the world, even if there was no bell at all. Now many went out into the wood for the sake of this splendid birth, but only one of them came back with some sort of explanation. None of them had gone far enough, nor had he, and yet he said that the sound of the bell came from a large owl in a hollow tree. It was a wisdom owl, which continually knocked its head against the tree, but he was unable to say with certainty whether its head or the hollow trunk of the tree was the cause of the noise. He was appointed bell ringer to the world, and wrote every year a short dissertation on the owl, but by this means people did not become any wiser than they had been before. It was just Confirmation Day. The clergyman had delivered a beautiful and touching sermon. The candidates were deeply moved by it. It was indeed a very important day for them. They were all at once transformed from mere children to grown-up people. The childish soul was to fly over, as it were, into a more reasonable being. The sun shone most brightly, and the sound of the great unknown bell was heard more distinctly than ever. They had a mind to go thither, all except 3. One of them wished to go home and try on her ball dress for this very dress, and the ball were the cause of her being confirmed this time. Otherwise, she would not have been allowed to go. The second, a poor boy, had borrowed a coat and a pair of boots from the son of his landlord to be confirmed in, and he had to return them at a certain time. The third said that he never went into strange places if his parents were not with him. He had always been a good child and wished to remain so, even after being confirmed, and they ought not to tease him for this. They, however, did it all the same. These 3, therefore, did not go. the others went on. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and the confirmed children sang too, holding each other by the hand, for they had no position yet, and they were all equal in the eyes of God. Two of the smallest soon became tired and returned to the town. Two little girls sat down and made garlands of flowers. They therefore did not go on. When the others arrived at the willow trees, where the confectioner had put up his stall, they said, "Now we are out here. The bell does not in reality exist. It is only something that people imagine." Then, suddenly, the sound of the bell was heard so beautifully and solemnly from the wood that 4 or 5 made up their minds to go still further on. The wood was very thickly grown. It was difficult to advance. Wood lilies and anemones grew almost too high. Flowering convolvuli and brambles were hanging like garlands from tree to tree, while the nightingales were singing and the sunbeams played. That was very beautiful, but the way was unfit for the girls. They would have torn their dresses. Large rocks covered with moss of various hues were lying about. The fresh spring water rippled forth with a peculiar sound. "I don't think that can be the bell," said one of the confirmed children. And then he lay down and listened. "We must try to find out if it is." And there he remained and let the others walk on. They came to a hut built of the bark of trees and branches. A large crab apple tree spread its branches over it, as if it intended to pour all its fruit on the roof upon which roses were blooming. The long boughs covered the gable where a little bell was hanging. Was this the one they had heard? All agreed that it must be so, except one who said that the bell was too small and too thin to be heard at such a distance, and that it had quite a different sound to that which had so touched men's hearts. He who spoke was a king's son, and therefore the others said that such a one always wishes to be cleverer than other people. Therefore they let him go alone. And as he walked on the solitude of the wood, produced a feeling of reverence in his breast. But still he heard the little bell about which the others rejoiced. And sometimes, when the wind blew in that direction, he could hear the sounds from the confectioner's stall, where the others were singing at tea. But the deep sounds of the bell were much stronger. Soon it seemed to him as if an organ played an accompaniment. The sound came from the left, from the side where the heart is. Now something rustled among the bushes, and a little boy stood before the king's son in wooden shoes, and such a short jacket that the sleeves did not reach to his wrists. They knew each other. The boy was the one who had not been able to go with them because he had to take the coat and boots back to his landlord's son. That he had done and had started again in his wooden shoes and old clothes, for the sound of the bell was too enticing. He felt he must go on. "We might go together," said the king's son, but the poor boy with the wooden shoes was quite ashamed. He pulled at the short sleeve of his jacket and said that he was afraid he could not walk so fast. Besides, he was of opinion that the bell ought to be sought at the right, for there was all that was grand and magnificent. "Then we shall not meet," said the king's son, nodding to the poor boy, who went into the deepest part of the wood, where the thorns tore his shabby clothes and scratched his hands, face, and feet until they bled. The king's son also received several good scratches, but the sun was shining on his way, and it is he whom we will now follow. For he was a quick fellow. "I will and must find the bell," he said, "if I have to go to the end of the world." Ugly monkeys sat high in the branches and clenched their teeth. "Shall we beat him?" they said. "Shall we thrash him? He is a king's son." But he walked on undaunted, deeper and deeper into the wood, where the most wonderful flowers were growing. There were standing white star lilies with blood-red stamens, sky-blue tulips shining when the wind moved them, apple trees covered with apples, like large, glittering soap bubbles. Only think how resplendent these trees were in the sunshine. All around were beautiful green meadows where hart and hind played in the grass. There grew magnificent oaks and beech trees, and if the bark was split of any of them, long blades of grass grew out of the clefts. There were also large, smooth lakes in the wood, on which the swans were swimming about and flapping their wings. The king's son often stood still and listened. Sometimes he thought that the sound of the bell rose up to him out of one of these deep lakes. But soon he found that this was a mistake, and that the bell was ringing still farther in the wood. Then the sun set. The clouds were as red as fire. It became quiet in the wood. He sank down on his knees, sang an evening hymn, and said, "I shall never find what I am looking for." Now the sun is setting, and the night, the dark night, is approaching. Yet I may perhaps see the round sun once more before he disappears beneath the horizon. I will climb up these rocks. They are as high as the highest trees. And then, taking hold of the creepers and roots, he climbed up on the wet stones where water snakes were wriggling, and the toads, as it were, barked at him. He reached the top before the sun, seen from such a height, had quite set. Oh, what a splendor! The sea, the great, majestic sea, which was rolling its long waves against the shore, stretched out before him, and the sun was standing like a large, bright altar. And there, where sea and heaven met, all melted together in the most glowing colors. The wood was singing, and his heart too. The whole of nature was one large holy church in which the trees and hovering clouds formed the pillars, the flowers and grass, the woven velvet carpet, and heaven itself was the great cupola. Up there, the flame color vanished as soon as the sun disappeared, but millions of stars were lighted. Diamond lamps were shining, and the king's son stretched his arms out towards heaven, towards the sea, and towards the wood. Then suddenly, the poor boy with the short-sleeved jacket and the wooden shoes appeared. He had arrived just as quickly on the road he had chosen, and they ran towards each other and took one another's hand in the great cathedral of nature and poesy, and above them sounded the invisible holy bell. Happy spirits surrounded them, singing hallelujahs and rejoicing. Holger Danske in Denmark. There stands an old castle named Kronenberg, close by the sound of Elsinore, where large ships, both English, Russian, and Prussian, pass by hundreds every day. And they salute the old castle with cannons, boom, boom, which is as if they said, "Good day." And the cannons of the old castle answer boom, which means many thanks. In winter, no ships sail by, for the whole sound is covered with ice as far as the Swedish coast, and has quite the appearance of a high road. The Danish and the Swedish flags wave, and Danes and Swedes say "good day" and "thank you" to each other. Not with cannons, but with a friendly shake of the hand. And they exchange white bread and biscuits with each other, because foreign articles taste the best. But the most beautiful sight of all is the old castle of Kronenberg, where Holger Danske sits in the deep, dark cellar into which no one goes. He is clad in iron and steel, and rests his head on his strong arm. His long beard hangs down on the marble table into which it has become firmly rooted. He sleeps and dreams, but in his dreams he sees everything that happens in Denmark. On each Christmas Eve, an angel comes to him and tells him that all he has dreamed is true, and that he may go to sleep again in peace, as Denmark is not yet in any real danger. But should danger ever come, then Holger Danske will rouse himself, and the table will burst asunder as he draws out his beard. Then he will come forth in his strength and strike a blow that shall sound in all the countries of the world. An old grandfather sat and told his little grandson all this about Holger Danske, and the boy knew that what his grandfather told him must be true. As the old man related this story, he was carving an image in wood to represent Holger Danske, to be fastened to the prow of a ship. For the old grandfather was a carver in wood, that is, one who carved figures for the heads of ships according to the names given to them. And now he had carved Holger Danske, who stood there erect and proud, with his long beard, holding in one hand his broad battle axe, while with the other he leaned on the Danish arms. The old grandfather told the little boy a great deal about Danish men and women who had distinguished themselves in olden times, so that he fancied he knew as much, even as Holger Danske himself, who after all could only dream. And when the little fellow went to bed, he thought so much about it that he actually pressed his chin against the counterpane and imagined that he had a long beard which had become rooted to it. But the old grandfather remained sitting at his work and carving away at the last part of it, which was the Danish arms. And when he had finished, he looked at the whole figure and thought of all he had heard and read, and what he had that evening related to his little grandson. Then he nodded his head, wiped his spectacles, and put them on, and said, "Ah, yes, Holger Danske will not appear in my lifetime, but the boy who is in bed there may very likely live to see him when the event really comes to pass." And the old grandfather nodded again, and the more he looked at Holger Danske, the more satisfied he felt that he had carved a good image of him. It seemed to glow with the color of life. The armor glittered like iron and steel. The hearts in the Danish arms grew more and more red, while the lions with gold crowns on their heads were leaping up. "That is the most beautiful coat of arms in the world," said the old man. "The lions represent strength, and the hearts gentleness and love." And as he gazed on the uppermost lion, he thought of King Canute, who chained great England to Denmark's throne. And he looked at the second lion and thought of Waldemar, who untied Denmark and conquered the Vandals. The third lion reminded him of Margaret, who united Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. But when he gazed at the red hearts, their colors glowed more deeply, even as flames, and his memory followed each in turn. The first led him to a dark, narrow prison, in which sat a prisoner, a beautiful woman, daughter of Christian IV, Eleanor, Ulfeld, and the flame became a rose on her bosom, and its blossoms were not more pure than the heart of this noblest and best of all Danish women. "Ah, yes, that is indeed a noble heart in the Danish arms," said the grandfather, and his spirit followed the second flame, which carried him out to sea, where cannons roared and the ships lay shrouded in smoke, and the flaming heart attached itself to the breast of Hvitfeldt in the form of the ribbon of an order, as he blew himself and his ship into the air in order to save the fleet. And the third flame led him to Greenland's wretched huts, where the preacher Hans Egede ruled with love in every word and action. The flame was as a star on his breast, and added another heart to the Danish arms. And as the old grandfather's spirit followed the next hovering flame, he knew whither it would lead him. In a peasant woman's humble room stood Frederick VI, writing his name with chalk on the beam. The flame trembled on his breast and in his heart, and it was in the peasant's room that his heart became one for the Danish arms. The old grandfather wiped his eyes, for he had known King Frederick with his silvery locks and his honest blue eyes, and had lived for him. And he folded his hands and remained for some time silent. Then his daughter came to him and said it was getting late, that he ought to rest for a while, and that the supper was on the table. "What you have been carving is very beautiful, grandfather," said she. "Holger Danske and the old coat of arms. It seems to me as if I have seen the face somewhere." "No, that is impossible," replied the old grandfather. "But I have seen it, and I have tried to carve it in wood, as I have retained it in my memory. It was a long time ago, while the English fleet lay in the roads on the 2nd of April, when we showed that we were true ancient Danes. I was on board the Denmark in Steen Bill's squadron. I had a man by my side whom even the cannonballs seemed to fear. He sung old songs in a merry voice, and fired and fought as if he were something more than a man. I still remember his face, but from whence he came, or whither he went, I know not. No one knows. I have often thought it might have been Holger Danske himself, who had swam down to us from Kronenburg to help us in the hour of danger. That was my idea, and there stands his likeness. The wooden figure threw a gigantic shadow on the wall, and even on part of the ceiling. It seemed as if the real Holger Danske stood behind it, for the shadow moved. But this was no doubt caused by the flame of the lamp not burning steadily. Then the daughter-in-law kissed the old grandfather and led him to a large armchair by the table. And she and her husband, who was the son of the old man and the father of the little boy who lay in bed, sat down to supper with him. And the old grandfather talked of the Danish lions and the Danish hearts, emblems of strength and gentleness, and explained quite clearly that there is another strength than that which lies in a sword. And he pointed to a shelf where lay a number of old books, and amongst them a collection of Holberg's plays, which are much read and are so clever and amusing that it is easy to fancy we have known the people of those days who are described in them. He knew how to fight also, said the old man, for he lashed the follies and prejudices of people during his whole life. Then the grandfather nodded to a place above the looking-glass, where hung an almanac with a representation of the round tower upon it, and said, "Tycho." Bra was another of those who used a sword, but not one to cut into the flesh and bone, but to make the way of the stars of heaven clear and plain to be understood. And then he whose father belonged to my calling. Yes, he, the son of the old image. Carver, he whom we ourselves have seen, with his silvery locks and his broad shoulders, whose name is known in all lands. Yes, he was a sculptor, while I am only a carver. Holger Danske can appear in marble, so that people in all countries of the world may hear of the strength of Denmark. Now let us drink the health of Bertel. But the little boy in bed saw plainly the old castle of Kronenberg, and the sound of Elsinore and Holger Danske far down in the cellar, with his beard rooted to the table, and dreaming of everything that was passing above him. And Holger Danske did dream of the little humble room in which the image carver sat. He heard all that had been said, and he nodded in his dream, saying, "Ah, yes, remember me. You Danish people, keep me in your memory. I will come to you in the hour of need." The bright morning light shone over Kronenberg, and the wind brought the sound of the hunting horn across from the neighboring shores. The ships sailed by and saluted the castle with the boom of the cannon, and Kronenberg returned the salute. Boom, boom. But the roaring cannons did not awake Holger Danske, for they meant only good morning and thank you. They must fire in another fashion before he awakes. But wake he will, for there is energy yet in Holger Danske. Grandmother is very old. Her face is folded with soft wrinkles, and her hair has turned the color of winter snow. Yet when you look into her eyes, you see something eternal. They're two quiet stars that still shine through the years. They are not bright like the stars of youth, but tender and full of peace, like those that watch over the world at dawn. When those eyes rest upon you, they seem to bless you without words. You feel comforted, as if she carries within her gaze the secret of a long and gentle life. Her dress is made of heavy, shimmering silk, with great flowers woven into its fabric, and when it rustles softly, like the whisper of leaves in an old garden. Everything about her carries the dignity of another time, the slow grace, the calm of one who has seen both sorrow and joy and made peace with them. But most wonderful of all are her stories. Oh, the stories she tells. No one can tell a tale like grandmother. When she speaks, The past seems to breathe again. The air fills with forgotten voices, and every word feels alive. She knows so much, for she was here long before father or mother were even born. That is certain. On the table beside her lies her old hymn book, its cover worn and bound with silver clasps. She opens it often, and inside, between the yellowed pages, rests a rose pressed flat, dry, and faded. It has lost its color, its scent, its life. Yet whenever grandmother looks upon it, her face softens. A smile, half joy and half sorrow, trembles upon her lips, and her eyes grow moist. We, the children, watch her and wonder, why does she look at that withered flower so tenderly? What secret does it hold? And then, as her tears fall upon its brittle petals, something marvelous happens. The air grows warm, and the rose seems to breathe again. A fragrance fills the room, faint at first, then sweet and full. The walls melt away into a golden haze, and suddenly we are no longer in grandmother's parlor, but in a great green wood. The sunlight streams through branches thick with leaves. Birds sing the earth smells of summer, and there, in that light, stands grandmother. But she is no longer old. She is a young maiden, radiant and fair, her cheeks fresh as morning roses, her hair bright, and curling her step light as laughter. Only her eyes remain the same, those mild, saintly eyes that belong to eternity. Beside her sits a young man, tall and strong. His hand is in hers. He gives her a rose, the very rose that now lies faded in her book, and she smiles a smile of such pure happiness that even time itself must have paused to look. Grandmother cannot smile like that now, not with the same unguarded joy. But she remembers. That smile still lingers faint but living each time she looks at the dried flower. It holds within it a whole lifetime youth love and the first awakening of dreams that never truly die. But time, ever gentle and ever cruel, has passed. The young man is gone, and the rose has withered in the old hymn book. Grandmother sits again in her chair, her eyes lowered, her heart filled with the quiet ache of remembrance. The fragrance has faded, but the love remains, and now grandmother is gone too. One evening, after telling us a long and beautiful story, a story of kings and angels and small miracles hidden in ordinary days, she said she was tired. She leaned her head back to rest, and we thought she had only fallen asleep. We heard her breathing softly, slowly, like the rhythm of a lullaby. Then the sound grew gentler still, until it ceased altogether. Her face grew bright with peace, as though a warm light shone from within. She smiled once more, the same smile she had given the young man long ago, and then people said she was dead. But we children did not believe she was gone. She looked too calm, too full of quiet joy. They placed her in a black coffin lined with white linen, and she looked so mild and beautiful that we were not afraid to look upon her. The wrinkles had vanished. Her hair shone like silver, and on her lips rested that sweet, mysterious smile. Beneath her head lay the hymn book, just as she had wished, and between its pages still slept the withered rose. Then they buried grandmother by the churchyard wall, where the wind hums softly through the grass. In spring, a rose tree grew from her grave, blooming soon, with blossoms as bright as her smile. The nightingale came each evening to sing among its flowers, and its song mingled with the music of the organ in the church. Inside the old psalms were sung the very ones written in grandmother's hymn book beneath her resting head. When the moon rose, it shone gently upon the grave, silvering the petals of the roses, and turning the grass to frost-like lace. Yet grandmother was not there. The dead know far more than the living. They understand that to appear again among us would bring fear, not comfort. They have crossed beyond the veil to a peace where no pain or parting can reach them. And so we live, and we remember. The earth lies upon her coffin. Within it, the book has turned to dust. The rose has crumbled into nothing. Yet over the grave, fresh roses bloom each year. The nightingale sings. The organ plays. And within our hearts, grandmother still lives her gentle eyes, her soft hands, her voice that told stories sweeter than dreams. Her eyes especially will never die. They are like stars that cannot fade. One day ours, too, shall open again, and we shall see her, not old and weary, but young and beautiful, as when she first smiled over a red living rose. And then we shall know that love, like her eyes, belongs to eternity. The happy family, the largest green leaf in this country, is certainly the burdock leaf. If you hold it in front of you, it is large enough for an apron. And if you hold it over your head, it is almost as good as an umbrella. It is so wonderfully large. A burdock never grows alone. Where it grows, there are many more, and it is a splendid sight. And all this splendor is good for snails, the great white snails, which grand people in olden times used to have made into fricassees. And when they had eaten them, they would say, "Oh, what a delicious dish!" for these people really thought them good. And these snails lived on burdock leaves, and for them the burdock was planted. There was once an old estate where no one now lived to require snails. Indeed, the owners had all died out, but the burdock still flourished. It grew over all the beds and walks of the garden. Its growth had no check, till it became at last quite a forest of burdocks. Here and there stood an apple or a plum tree, but for this nobody would have thought the place had ever been a garden. It was burdock from one end to the other, and here lived the last two surviving snails. They knew not themselves how old they were, but they could remember the time when there were a great many more of them, and that they were descended from a family which came from foreign lands, and that the whole forest had been planted for them and theirs. They had never been away from the garden, but they knew that another place once existed in the world called the Duke's Palace, Castle, in which some of their relations had been boiled till they became black and were then laid on a silver dish. But what was done afterwards, they did not know. Besides, they could not imagine exactly how it felt to be boiled and placed on a silver dish. But no doubt it was something very fine and highly genteel. Neither the cockchafer, nor the toad, nor the earthworm, whom they questioned about it, would give them the least information, for none of their relations had ever been cooked or served on a silver dish. The old white snails were the most aristocratic race in the world. They knew that. The forest had been planted for them, and the nobleman's castle had been built entirely that they might be cooked and laid on silver dishes. They lived quite retired and very happily, and as they had no children of their own, they had adopted a little common snail, which they brought up as their own child. The little one would not grow, for he was only a common snail. But old people, particularly the mother snail, declared that she could easily see how he grew. And when the father said he could not perceive it, she begged him to feel the little snail's shell. And he did so, and found that the mother was right. One day it rained very fast. Listen, what a drumming there is on the burdock leaves. Turn, turn, turn. Turn, 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 said the father snail. There come the drops, said the mother. They are trickling down the stalks. We shall have it very wet here presently. I am very glad we have such good houses, and that the little one has one of his own. There has been really more done for us than for any other creature. It is quite plain that we are the most noble people in the world. We have houses from our birth, and the burdock forest has been planted for us. I should very much like to know how far it extends and what lies beyond it. There can be nothing better than we have here, said the father snail. I wish for nothing more." "Yes, but I do," said the mother. "I should like to be taken to the palace and boiled and laid upon a silver dish, as was done to all our ancestors. And you may be sure it must be something very uncommon. The nobleman's castle perhaps has fallen to decay," said the snail father. "Or the burdock wood may have grown out. You need not be in a hurry. You are always so impatient, and the youngster is getting just the same. He has been 3 days creeping to the top of that stalk. I feel quite giddy when I look at him." "You must not scold him," said the mother snail. "He creeps so very carefully. He will be the joy of our home, and we old folks have nothing else to live for. But have you ever thought where we are to get a wife for him? Do you think that farther out in the wood there may be others of our race? There may be black snails, no doubt," said the old snail. "Black snails without houses. But they are so vulgar and conceited, too. But we can give the ants a commission. They run here and there, as if they all had so much business to get through. They most likely will know of a wife for our youngster." "I certainly know a most beautiful bride," said one of the ants. "But I fear it would not do, for she is a queen." "That does not matter," said the old snail. "Has she a house?" "She has a palace," replied the ant. "A most beautiful ant palace with 700 passages." "Thank you," said the mother snail. "But our boy shall not go to live in an ant hill. If you know of nothing better, we will give the commission to the white gnats. They fly about in rain and sunshine. They know the burdock wood from one end to the other." "We have a wife for him," said the gnats. 100 man steps from here, there is a little snail with a house sitting on a gooseberry bush. She is quite alone and old enough to be married. It is only 100 man steps from here." "Then let her come to him," said the old people. "He has the whole burdock forest. She has only a bush." So they brought the little lady snail. She took 8 days to perform the journey. But that was just as it ought to be, for it showed her to be one of the right breeding. And then they had a wedding. 6 glowworms gave as much light as they could, but in other respects, it was all very quiet, for the old snails could not bear festivities or a crowd. But a beautiful speech was made by the mother snail. The father could not speak. He was too much overcome. Then they gave the whole burdock forest to the young snails as an inheritance, and repeated what they had so often said, that it was the finest place in the world, and that if they led upright and honorable lives, and their family increased, they and their children might someday be taken to the nobleman's palace to be boiled black and laid on a silver dish. And when they had finished speaking, the old couple crept into their houses and came out no more, for they slept. The young snail pair now ruled in the forest and had a numerous progeny. But as the young ones were never boiled or laid in silver dishes, they concluded that the castle had fallen into decay and that all the people in the world were dead. And as nobody contradicted them, they thought they must be right, and the rain fell upon the burdock leaves to play the drum for them, and the sun shone to paint colors on the burdock forest for them, and they were very happy. The whole family were entirely and perfectly happy. The Jumper. Once upon a time, in a small kingdom, where even the smallest creatures were granted the right to dream grandly, there lived 3 proud jumpers: the flea, the grasshopper, and the skipjack. Each believed himself blessed with a gift so rare that the world should witness it. And so, with great ceremony, they announced a contest to see which of them could leap the highest. Invitations were sent far and wide, fluttering on the wind, and whispered from ear to ear, until even the king himself declared he would attend. Let all come who wish to see the marvel, proclaimed the royal herald. For His Majesty has promised a splendid reward, his daughter's hand in marriage to the one who jumps the highest. The royal hall was swept and decorated for the occasion. Sunlight poured through tall stained glass windows, scattering shards of color across the marble floor. Courtiers filled the room, fanning themselves with silver fans, eager for amusement. Upon a raised dais sat the king, solemn yet curious. Beside him, the princess, whose eyes shone with the quiet mischief of one too often made the prize of strange competitions. The first to step forward was the flea. He was small, almost invisible, but his confidence was enormous. He bowed with elegant precision, once to the king, once to the princess, and once modestly to the audience. His manners were flawless, for as everyone knew, he carried noble blood in his veins, the blood of ladies, no less. Having feasted upon humanity, he felt himself rather above the animal kingdom, and looked at his rivals with delicate disdain. Next came the grasshopper. He was larger green as a spring meadow, and possessed a pleasing figure that gleamed beneath the chandeliers. He carried himself with the pride of an ancient lineage. My ancestors, he announced, were born in the sacred sands of Egypt, where we were honored as voices of the fields. I have just returned from the countryside, where I was a guest within a splendid card house 3 stories high. The walls were of the Queen of Hearts herself, and my song filled the air like temple bells. He straightened his legs and smoothed his wings. I sing, he continued so sweetly that 16 native crickets who have chirped all their lives without ever earning a card, house of their own, would grow thin with envy if they heard me. The courtiers clapped politely, though a few crickets hidden beneath the floorboards muttered bitterly among themselves. The flea and the grasshopper both made sure that everyone in the room understood their noble claims, one by pedigree, the other by talent, and that both considered themselves entirely worthy of the princess's hand. Then quietly came the skipjack. He said nothing at all. He was small, simple, and made of the breastbone of a goose, a thing of wax and spring, with no voice to boast of. Yet his silence intrigued the court. "He may not speak," whispered the old yard dog, sniffing him suspiciously, "but I can tell he comes from good stock. Smells of honesty and of supper." The royal counselor, a grave man who had earned 3 medals simply for keeping silent in meetings, cleared his throat and declared, "The skipjack is a creature of prophecy. From his bones, one might tell whether winter will be harsh or gentle. And that's more than can be said for the man who writes the almanac." The king nodded gravely. "We shall see," he said. "I speak little, but I think much." And so the contest began. The flea went first. With a twitch of his tiny limbs, he vanished. So high did he spring that no one could see him. The audience gasped, or perhaps pretended to, for how could anyone applaud what they could not witness? Murmurs rose. "He didn't jump at all," some whispered. "A trick," said others. The flea returned to the floor, insulted by their blindness. "Ignorance," he hissed under his breath. Next came the grasshopper. He flexed his long legs, hummed a few triumphant notes, and leapt, not quite as high as the flea, but far enough to land directly in the king's face. The monarch flinched, his crown tilting askew. "Highly improper," he roared. The grasshopper bowed in embarrassment, though he secretly thought the leap rather magnificent. Finally, the skipjack took his place. He stood still for a long time, so long that some thought his spring was broken. "Poor thing," muttered the yard dog, sniffing again. "He's lost his nerve." The princess leaned forward, amused, then snap with a sudden sharp motion. The skipjack flew into the air. Not high, not far, but perfectly aimed, landing gently in the lap of the princess herself, who let out a startled laugh. The crowd gasped. The flea fumed. The grasshopper sulked. The king rose. "The highest leap," he declared, "is not the one that vanishes from sight, nor the one that strikes my royal nose, but the one that reaches the heart. He who has sprung to my daughter has leapt highest indeed. And thus the skipjack, humble and silent, won the princess's hand. The flea muttered bitterly, I leapt to heaven itself, and yet am unseen. But in this world, it seems one must have a body to be believed. He packed his tiny knapsack and enlisted in foreign service, where they say he met his end upon a soldier's sleeve. The grasshopper, heartbroken and reflective, retired to a ditch outside the palace. There he sang to the twilight a mournful tune of envy and wisdom. A body is required, he repeated. A body is required. His melancholy melody drifted through the reeds, and some say that's how this tale came to be told. As for the skipjack, he became a prince, light of body, but full of spring. The princess found him delightful, for though he was made of mere wax and wire, he could make her laugh whenever he leapt. And though others claimed the story was untrue, it was written down all the same, for in this world, what is printed often passes for truth. The drop of water. Of course, you know what a magnifying glass is. One of those little round lenses that makes every tiny thing look 100 times bigger than it truly is. Through it, a crumb becomes a mountain, a hair, a tree trunk, and a drop of pond water, a whole universe. When a person holds such a glass to his eye and gazes upon that small, glistening bead drawn from the still pond by the meadow, he will see, if he has any patience, 1,000 marvelous beings swimming and tumbling about, creatures invisible to the naked sight, yet as real as you or I. They dart and whirl and twist in wild delight. They chase one another and seize one another. They dance their little dances and fight their little wars. Some devour, some flee. Some cling together in clusters like merry children at play. It almost looks like a crowded marketplace of spiders all leaping and tumbling about in confusion, fierce yet strangely joyful in their own busy way. Now, in a small, crooked hut at the edge of the village, lived an old man whom everyone called Cribble. Crabble. And truly, that was his name. He was a curious soul, greedy for wonders, and always longing for the best of everything. If he could not gain what he wanted by ordinary means, then he would gain it by magic, for he was well versed in the dark and glittering arts that twist nature to one's desire. I owned old books bound in skin bottles filled with murmuring liquids, and boxes that never opened the same way twice. Yet of all his possessions, his most beloved was a simple thing, a magnifying glass, clear as ice, and set in brass, through which He believed the secrets of the world could be read, like writing upon glass. One afternoon, while the wind whispered over the reeds, Cribble Crabble sat by his window and held the lens to his eye. He had scooped a drop of water from a muddy puddle near the ditch, a common drop brownish and dull to anyone else. But when he raised it beneath his glass, he gasped aloud. What a cribbling and crabbling there was within. Thousands of tiny beings sprang and tumbled, seized and bit and swallowed each other whole. It was a frenzy of life and hunger. Horrible, cried the old man, his gray brows knitting. Such cruelty. Can they not be persuaded to live in peace and quietness, each tending his own little affairs, without trampling his neighbor? He pondered long over this, drumming his fingers upon the table, but no peaceful plan would do. At last he muttered, "If I am to understand them, they must be made clearer to my sight. Perhaps a touch of color will reveal their nature." So he reached for a small vial that glowed faintly in the dusk. Into the droplet of water, he let fall a single, ruby-red bead of liquid. It was not wine as it appeared, but witch's blood, drawn from the lobes of the ear. Finest quality, nen, pence a drop, and dangerous to waste. The moment it touched the water, the whole tiny world blushed pink. Now the creatures shone like naked little men and women, rushing through the rosy light. It looked indeed like an entire city of wild folk stripped bare to the skin. Just then, another magician passed by, an odd fellow, ancient as the hills, and so secret that no one had ever given him a name. He was simply called the Nameless One, and that was perhaps the best thing about him. What curiosity have you caught there? Cribble Crabble, he asked, peering with eyes as sharp as needles. If you can guess, said Cribble. Crabble chuckling. Make you a gift of it. That is easily said, replied the Nameless One, but not so easily done. I took up the magnifying glass and bent close. Through the lens, he saw what seemed to be a vast city alive with countless naked beings. Streets of movement, squares of struggle, alleys of noise and dust everywhere, quarrel and uproar. It was terrible to watch. One creature clawed another. One was dragged down as another climbed up. Teeth flashed, limbs tangled. The stronger trampled the weak. The quick outwitted the slow. Look there, cried one little man. His leg is longer than mine. Away with it. Another jeered. That one bears a bruise. It must pain him. Let it pain him more. They swarmed upon the wounded one, tore and bit and devoured him. And see, over there sat a gentle creature, quiet as a maiden, wishing only for peace. Yet even she was not spared. They pulled her hair, dragged her to the center, and tore her apart with laughter. The nameless one lowered the glass and gave a dry little laugh. "That is a merry sight," said he. "Indeed," said Cribble, Crabble. "But can you tell me what it is?" "Why, surely that is plain enough," said the other. "It is Paris or London or any great city of men, for they are all the same. See how they scramble and bite, how they envy and destroy one another. A great city indeed." Cribble, Crabble leaned back and chuckled till the tears ran down his cheeks. "A city," he said at last. You are mistaken, friend. It is nothing more than a drop of puddle water." The nameless one smelled faintly, but whether in scorn or sorrow, none could tell. "Then your puddle is wiser than most men," he said, and went his way, leaving Cribble Crabble to stare once more into the little red world that boiled and shimmered under his glass, a tiny mirror of all mankind. The little match seller. It was terribly cold and nearly dark on the last evening of the old year, and the snow was falling fast. In the cold and the darkness, a poor little girl with bare head and naked feet roamed through the streets. It is true, she had on a pair of slippers when she left home, but they were not of much use. They were very large, so large indeed that they had belonged to her mother, and the poor little creature had lost them in running across the street to avoid 2 carriages that were rolling along at a terrible rate. One of the slippers she could not find, and a boy seized upon the other and ran away with it, saying that he could use it as a cradle when he had children of his own. So the little girl went on with her little naked feet, which were quite red and blue with the cold, in an old apron. She carried a number of matches and had a bundle of them in her hands. No one had bought anything of her the whole day, nor had anyone given here even a penny. Shivering with cold and hunger, she crept along. Poor little child. She looked the picture of misery. The snowflakes fell on her long, fair hair, which hung in curls on her shoulders. But she regarded them not. Lights were shining from every window, and there was a savory smell of roast goose, for it was New Year's Eve. Yes, she remembered that. In a corner between 2 houses, one of which projected beyond the other, she sank down and huddled herself together. She had drawn her little feet under her, but she could not keep off the cold. And she dared not go home, for she had sold no matches and couldn't take home even a penny of money. Her father would certainly beat her. Besides, it was almost as cold at home as here, for they had only the roof to cover them, through which the wind howled, although the largest holes had been stopped up with straw and rags. Her little hands were almost frozen with the cold. Ah, perhaps A burning match might be some good if she could draw it from the bundle and strike it against the wall just to warm her fingers. She drew one out. Scratch! How it sputtered as it burnt. It gave a warm, bright light, like a little candle, as she held her hand over it. It was really a wonderful light. It seemed to the little girl that she was sitting by a large iron stove with polished brass feet and a brass ornament. How the fire burned and seemed so beautifully warm that the child stretched out her feet as if to warm them, when lo, the flame of the match went out. The stove vanished, and she had only the remains of the half-burnt match in her hand. She rubbed another match on the wall. It burst into a flame, and where its light fell upon the wall, it became as transparent as a veil, and she could see into the room. The table was covered with a snowy white tablecloth on which stood a splendid dinner service and a steaming roast goose stuffed with apples and dried plums. And what was still more wonderful, the goose jumped down from the dish and waddled across the floor with a knife and fork in its breast to the little girl. Then the match went out, and there remained nothing but the thick, damp, cold wall before her. She lighted another match, and then she found herself sitting under a beautiful Christmas tree. It was larger and more beautifully decorated than the one which she had seen through the glass door at the rich merchant's. Thousands of tapers were burning upon the green branches, and colored pictures, like those she had seen in the show windows, looked down upon it all. The little one stretched out her hand towards them, and the match went out. The Christmas lights rose higher and higher till they looked to her like the stars in the sky. Then she saw a star fall, leaving behind it a bright streak of fire. Someone is dying, thought the little girl, for her old grandmother, the only one who had ever loved her and who was now dead, had told her that when a star falls, a soul was going up to God. She again rubbed a match on the wall, and the light shone round her. In the brightness stood her old grandmother, clear and shining, yet mild and loving in her appearance. "Grandmother," cried the little one, "oh, take me with you. I know you will go away when the match burns out. You will vanish like the warm stove, the roast goose, and the large, glorious Christmas tree." And she made haste to light the whole bundle of matches, for she wished to keep her grandmother there. And the matches glowed with a light that was brighter than the noonday, and her grandmother had never appeared so large or so beautiful. She took the little girl in her arms, and they both flew upwards in brightness and joy far above the earth, where there was neither cold nor hunger nor pain, for they were with God. In the dawn of morning, There lay the poor little one with pale cheeks and smiling mouth, leaning against the wall. She had been frozen to death on the last evening of the year, and the New Year's sun rose and shone upon a little corpse. The child still sat in the stiffness of death, holding the matches in her hand, one bundle of which was burnt. She tried to warm herself, said some. No one imagined what beautiful things she had seen, nor into what glory she had entered with her grandmother on New Year's Day.